I'm Bill Anderson, and you're listening to Expat Radio. We're coming live from the Costa del Sol, and my guest today is Marcel Salazar, who is a physical therapist working on the Costa del Sol in the Mijas area. And I'm asking him today about his work and some other things related to health. You said about dealing with pain, and I know from our conversation previously, you said that this is a biggie for your
Yeah,
or your work.
it is. And I see a lot of people they're in pain. They often don't understand why they're in pain. And what's very interesting for me, obviously for the sufferer, it's less interesting and more of a problem they just want to get rid of, is the difference between a chronic and acute pain. And there is a fundamental difference. Chronic pain obviously means that you've had it for a longer period of time. That period of time is usually greater than 3 weeks.
Right.
So if you've had pain for that period of time, then it becomes a chronic pain. And chronic pain opens up a lot more doorways to problems, because you can have pain that is no longer in one place, it extends to another.
Right.
You can have pain that actually is not as bad as it really is. It just feels that way to you. You can expect pain. Your brain expects pain, so then you have pain. So it goes down this whole path. And acute pain is obviously shorter than 3 weeks, less than recent injury. And that's more straightforward, because when you have a problem in an elbow or an ankle, right, or your back, you can feel it there. That's where the problem is. Sometimes it radiates above or below, but it generally stays there. So it's more manageable and heals faster as well. But with chronic pain, it takes a little bit longer. And sometimes clarifying that for my patients is very important, because they need to understand that the longer you've had pain, sometimes the longer it takes to heal pain.
Sure.
And luckily for me, I've had some amazing results with my chronic pain patients, which has been amazing. There's a degree of investigation as well, which is fascinating for me. Because sometimes a patient will present with certain pain in a certain area, right, and it's my job to find out actually where is the problem originating from. And so that's where I'll go on and I do the whole body. I really do look at everything that they're doing. So lifestyle, nutrition, activities or lack thereof,
right,
history, of course, surgical, allergies, all that type of stuff. Nutrition as well are crucial for me.
Yeah, our producer Dave is just sending me a message saying that I think he's hurt every bit of himself from football injuries, dislocated shoulders, and I think that's why he's a radio producer these days, a radio station owner, rather than a footballer.
Football is classic. So normally football, of course, I used to work. So I was able to work in the States for a short while, and I worked with soccer players over there. And of course, everything is lower limb with them, but interestingly, I actually have a patient at the moment who had a shoulder problem because he did a scissor kick and landed on one side with his head landing on his shoulder. So you can see that in the video, but you can't on the radio. But yes, it's quite common, unfortunately. If you're particularly an adventurous footballer, you can injure any part of your body, really. So.
Yeah, and I guess it's probably why it's young guys that play football, because the older you get, probably the more easy it is to do yourself some damage, no?
Correct. I mean, I have a regular patient who has done the smart thing, which is that he's a friend and patient who he comes to me every week because he wants to keep on top of his condition.
Right.
And by doing that, it helps him to prevent. So I'm all about prevention whenever possible. So if I can advise a person what to do to prevent reoccurrence of injury or the occurrence of any injury, then I will give you advice and I'll give you treatments. And this client in particular comes to me every week in order to just work the areas of his body that he knows are a weakness.
Yeah, well, I think the advice to Dave is give up the football, Dave, and take up table tennis.
Yeah, just sit down. It's fine. No, that's not my advice. That's definitely not my advice.
We'll come to that one later, actually.
Yes, we'll come back to that.
But we're going to talk about some of the lifestyle things, and particularly the changes in people's lifestyles that may have impacted on you. It's interesting. I just listening to the news before we came on. In the UK, they said that there are 5 million people waiting for operations in the UK. And a lot of these are, replacement surgery, whether it be knees or hips or whatever. Is this something you've seen down here, that people are waiting for operations and they're being cancelled or postponed because of the COV1D problem.
Yes. So it is, I mean, one thing that I can say that I've come across with the patients that I've seen, so they're obviously my perspective, is that the surgeries they've had done generally have been very good. So when they've been able to get surgery, the standard has been excellent, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
What's been lacking has been the post-surgery care.
Okay.
So when they've been able to get in and have the surgery, that's great. Obviously, everyone's been delayed. Everyone's been affected. Some have been pushed back. But with the major ones and the urgent ones, they have done very well to cycle through and get through what they need to. And as I say, the standard has been very good. But similar to the UK, the post-surgical care is somewhat lacking for sure, because there's not that much attention paid to quality of life. It's about getting you back to the absolute basics. That means, can you get up? Can you walk to the loo and back? Right. Okay, you're done.
Okay. So
and that's where I fill the gap.
Let me give you a very concrete example. A good friend of ours just actually last week, Saturday, came out of hospital after hip replacement surgery. Yeah. What kind of advice would you give to her in terms of getting back
I've had the pleasure of working with two lovely ladies actually who have had surgery. One was exactly a year ago, and the other was 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, sorry. And it depends on where you are. So if it's very recent, you need to allow your body to heal from what you've had done, because it is major surgery. It's almost as big as it gets, really.
It's a trauma, isn't it? It's a real trauma to the body.
It's a huge trauma, exactly right. And if you think about the area, because what you'll notice with the evolution of surgery is that surgeries are becoming more and more refined, in that the less damage we can do to the exterior, the faster you heal and the better your body deals with the healing process.
Sure.
Hip surgery, unfortunately, is still at the point where they have to literally open you up, anything up to 10, 15 centimeters on the side of your hip, and go in and open things up and so on. So that is still very traumatic and dramatic for your whole body.
Sure.
And so it's very important that you heal from that first of all, and then that you are progressively led towards improving, first of all, your range of movement. So managing pain is very important throughout, but then range of movement, that means how much you can move your leg left, right, up and down, all that type of stuff. Recuperate your strength, because of course if you're resting, you're not using your muscles, and therefore you weaken.
Sure.
And that's again another topic we'll come back to in a little bit about general health. But when you're sedentary for extended periods of time, everyone knows, or hopefully they do, that you weaken your body.
Yeah.
So when you have surgery, the same thing happens. You weaken your body because you're resting to recover. So it's still using your energy, but in a very different way. Your muscles will shrink in size, and you don't want that to get too excessive. So what I would want to do with somebody who has recently had surgery is to maintain as much muscle mass as possible.
Right.
And there are various ways of doing that, just from actively switching on the muscle yourself, consciously switching on, for example, your bottom muscles, and then switching on your quad muscles, and then switching on your hamstring muscles. And these are all muscles in and around the hip area,
right,
that would just keep the connection. Because again, when you have surgery, your subconscious connection, or what's called proprioception, is severed between your brain and the limb that's been affected. By actively controlling that muscle, you start to rebuild that connection. And that connection is fundamental, because it's one reason why people trip and fall after major injuries or surgeries, because the connection, the proprioceptive connection, has been severed. Right. And building that up, the rehabilitation thing, is very, very important.
Yeah. I certainly identify, not personally with what you're saying, Marcel. My son in Scotland is a professional mountaineer, and he has had 2 spine fractures in his time. Well, the first one, actually, he was a dentist at the time, and his car went off the road in black ice and spun over, and he got an unstable fracture in his spine.
Okay.
But you know, he's built he's built like a young boy in terms of he's very thin, very wiry, but he obviously has a fantastic muscle structure underneath all that, you know, for all his climbing and exercise. And he came back really well. It took a few months, but came back extremely well. But I think that was because his physical state when this happened was very, very good.
Yes, absolutely. So I've worked with people in my past. I've worked with patients exactly with that mindset, which is that if they know they have to have surgery, the more you can do beforehand in a controlled and measured way, the better. Now, obviously, an accident is an accident. You're not planning for it. But if you know, for example, you're going to go for a knee replacement or a hip replacement or some major surgery, the more you can do to improve your health prior to the surgery, the faster you're going to heal.
And by improving your health, are you talking about building up your muscles and the strength in the areas that's going to be affected by it?
As I mentioned before, 100% what you've just said, but also your general health. So your ability to heal is based on what you feed your body, how much exercise you do, and also your mental health as well. Now, if those three things are not in sync or not in symmetry, then you'll probably have a little bit of a delayed response or delayed recovery time because something's not quite optimized. And this happens all the time because in the medical profession, they're not really looking at all three of these different things. They're just looking at, well, let's get you open. Is that healing properly? Do you have an infection? Can you walk to the loo? Okay, you're done. And so, you know, it's all about those things, the nutrition, what you feed your body, what you're thinking about as well, and then how proactive you are in your own recovery.
Yeah, I think you know, to back up what you've said there, the medical services here in Spain are actually very, very good services. My late wife had to use them a lot, and honestly, the services I couldn't fault them. But I think what you say is quite important, that there are other aspects to us as people rather than just the physical. And you know, they're very good at dealing with the physical, but the emotional, the psychological isn't really something that they either can do or do.
Yeah. I would even stress that there's so many constraints on a general health system that there's only so much they can do with the physical.
Right.
So if there's only so much they can do with the physical, there's definitely only going to be so much they can do with the mental and the nutritional, because they just simply don't have the time.
Right.
So in that way, you're absolutely right. The care that's taken is fantastic. It does depend on what it is you're getting. So obviously, if it's a surgical thing, or if it's something related to maybe a major disease, then you know the treatments can be different, and the time that they spend on each one may vary. But when it comes to covering aspects of nutrition and mental health, then we know that they're definitely lacking. That's certainly not something that will be paid attention to. Yeah. But as I mentioned, when I see patients that have had, let's say, major surgery, once the surgeon is satisfied that your healing has occurred, it doesn't matter whether or not you're experiencing chronic pain or whether or not you can walk for more than 30 minutes. As long as their job is done, the general route or path to solution is only medication.
Right.
When actually there is a lot more that you can do. There are a lot of therapies and services that you can do that would open up other options for you and probably work very, very well. And that's when people tend to seek me out, or people like me, health professionals like
me. How do you manage the bit, you know, you're saying about, for example, pain medication. How do you balance that bit out, Marcel? You know, someone comes and they clearly are or have been in severe pain, and now they're using perhaps fairly strong pain-killing medication. You obviously can't just say, right, stop it tomorrow and that'll be fine.
No.
How do you manage that part?
Absolutely. So the good thing is I have a massive advantage, which is that I was smart enough to marry an amazing woman who also happens to be a pharmacist.
Right.
So my wife is a registered qualified UK registered pharmacist who I always do a full medical background, including medications. And of course, her being a pharmacist, I'm able to ask her about interactions, about reactions, about side effects, etc., and get a reliable response.
Right.
So it is very, very useful for me to understand that from that perspective, from another health professional.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, what we very often can find is that that most medications, particularly pain management ones, are purely a plaster for the problem.
Yeah.
They are not healing or curative. It's important that, and I think most people now realize that. Maybe about 20 years ago, people would think, oh, I take these and suddenly I'll be better.
Yeah.
But actually, it's just masking it.
It's dealing with symptoms, isn't it? And not with the actual problem.
Correct. Because it can't. It doesn't target and then re-heal a problem area.
No.
Sometimes, and this is something where people come to me very often, particularly my hip patients most recently. They came to me out of desperation because they were on 3 or 4 extremely powerful drugs, like the most you can get without it being an opioid,
right?
Which is therefore addictive. And very high doses out of desperation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was purely that the tissue of their body just hadn't been appropriately dealt with.
Right.
And what we've done is deal with it now. And the pain is significantly gone away completely. Right. And now the goal is, in correlation with that, to slowly reduce and taper the medication in connection with their doctor and communication and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously come filtering off. Now, sometimes some patients take it upon themselves to just stop, and that's up to them.
Sure.
But others will taper based on my recommendations, and that's exactly what we want to do. But always an open communication with the doctor, because it's not about working against them. It's just about highlighting where they're at. Because again, the doctor will be very busy. They may not even be able to see them. That's another problem I've had, is getting post-information, surgery,
sure,
getting in to actually just get a checkup with the doctor is very tricky, because they're busily doing vaccines now. So
it's very complicated at the moment.
Very occupied, yeah.
If you're lucky, you get a phone call, but actually getting appointments has been very complicated. Yeah, Marcel, we're going to take a short break, and it has to be the song that people are singing when they come to you, and it's by the Beatles.
Yes.
It's by the Beatles, and
I saw that.
Help.
Very appropriate. Love it.
Welcome back. I'm Bill Anderson, and we're coming live from the Costa del Sol with my guest today, Marcel Salazar, who is a physical therapist. And we've been talking about some of his more traditional work in dealing with injuries and sports injuries, soft tissue injuries. I'd like to move on a little bit, Marcel, because when we chatted previously, we're talking about the way our lives have changed. I'm almost reluctant to say with the COVID thing because because it takes us into a whole new world. Yes. But it has changed the way a lot of people live, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it's 100%, and in my line of work it's kind of the direct reaction, if you will. If a person doesn't go to a doctor, or they go and see a doctor, and the doctor can't really do anything for them, they tend to seek out a person like me. So I'm seeing people that are having the exact negative effect of being kept indoors.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing is most commonly posturally related problems.
Right.
So what we're seeing is lower back pain. I see probably 70% of my business is lower back pain, and I specialize in that, and the management of it and treatment and so on. And in addition to lower back pain, which is a huge area, I'm also seeing a lot of neck and shoulder problems. And the reason for that is because we're all more connected. Okay, right, so sure. I'm speaking on a laptop right now, and a lot of people are working from laptops. And I did mention this to you because I have a little bit of a problem, should we say, a little bug in my bonnet, shall we say, about laptops being used for long-term usage.
Sure.
Because they are designed for quick desktop work, but because of the angle of the screen and the keyboard, there's always a problem, because if you're in this one position where you're looking angled down, so the angle at your neck is changed, instead of you looking straight ahead, which is what you would do when you're watching television or when you're looking at a desktop computer, which you should be, that takes a strain away from your neck. Your neck is used to being directly above your shoulders. But when you look down at an angled screen, and again, similar to using a mobile device as well, when you look down at these things, it increases, it amplifies the weight at the rear of your neck by anything up to 25%. So it's a huge strain. And if you think about the amount of time that you're in that position, it's no wonder that you get strain through your neck. Then you get tension through your shoulders, and then you get a headache.
Sure.
And the connection is all there. So, and that can lead to other problems. Again, what that leads on to, that I've seen directly, is shoulder issues. Because if you suddenly become more physically active, or you do even something simple like get something out of the cupboard, the simple position of your upper back falling forward slightly means that you end up having an incorrect position in your shoulder, and suddenly, that hurts just picking up a can of beans or something, or taking out the tea from your cupboard. Very simple activity, nothing incredibly intense, but it creates a shoulder problem. And again, I've been able to diagnose and sort those things out, which has been amazing. But of course, that's something that usually is avoidable, is not usually a cause of injury unless posture was a problem beforehand otherwise. But yes, posture-related things is very prevalent.
And I think something you just mentioned in passing earlier is chairs. I mean, I certainly am spending far more time in front of a computer screen than I used to. I was more out and about previously, and now I'm more in contact with people via social media or WhatsApp or whatever. Maybe if you're working in an office and the office has a requirement for health and safety to have certain types of chairs for you working in front of screens, I think in general, maybe I'm wrong, people don't have or invest in that kind of stuff at home.
No. And it hasn't been recommended. This is the problem. That transition from working in an office to working from home, it's taken many years for the office industry to do what's called a desk assessment. There's actually a name for it. It's called a desk assessment.
Right.
And that's where somebody, usually either from HR or someone with an occupational therapist or something like that, they might go and look at everyone's desk and they say, right, well, that could be better, or you could use a standing desk, etc. But suddenly we're all working from home.
Right.
And do you know the worst place to work from?
Where?
See if you can imagine. It's the sofa.
Oh, the sofa. Oh, yeah.
The sofa is the worst place to work from, because it's designed for comfort. We're in this very slouched position. And if we have the desk, the laptop on our laps or something like that, our whole body is in a C shape.
Sure.
And you're not meant to sit in that position for a very long period of time. Mm-hmm. So when you get up from that, you're all stiff in the lower back, and you have to sort of lift your chest up to sort of suddenly reverse the C shape you've created.
But I guess even the dining room table isn't necessarily the best place, because that's also designed for easy access, and your laptop's going to be quite low down. So what you're describing, this sort of bending forward to get the right angle and whatever.
That's right.
I have a desk in my office, and I was very conscious it was too low. Mm-hmm. So we actually blocked it up so that I'm even if I'm using my laptop, it's far more at eye level for me now than it would have been just about anywhere else in the house.
That's it. So my best friend, I love to use this example of my best friend. He actually lives in Nerdeker, and he had chronic neck pain, and he works from home. He has been working from home for the last 2 or 3 years. And I went around his house and I said, "Show me your desk setup." And he said, "Oh, well, I just work from the sofa sometimes. And how long are you there? Oh, 6 to 8 hours sometimes." Yeah. Like, you're mad. You're absolutely mad. And he's got terrible neck pain. So I said, "Show me your desk." So he has an office and a desk, but he wasn't using it that much. He was just chilling. So then I said, "Okay, here's what you need to do. You're going to buy a monitor. You're going to connect your laptop to that monitor, and you're going to get a separate keyboard that you can then do." Now, obviously, this might not be practical for everybody, but because he could do that, he could afford to do that, and it was necessary for his work. That when he did that, his desk setup looked very professional. He had a wide screen. It was an eye line. His office chair was much better situated. He had a keyboard, which was Bluetooth, and it was connected to his tablet, his laptop, which he didn't need to touch anymore.
Sure.
So he was using everything on his laptop, but he was doing it all there. And suddenly his positioning was completely different. The head was in a much better position. and he doesn't suffer from serious neck pain anymore. He had to get therapy for it, admittedly, because he doesn't live locally. He couldn't come to me, but I did provide therapy when I saw him. and yeah, it's made an entirely different situation for his entire working life, because it was unsustainable any other way. And he's got 2 young children who make things worse because they hang off his neck. So that's just
well, I can identify with that, because we do have a tower system, but I'm kind of addicted to my laptop, and I decided just a few weeks ago I'm going to connect the good big screen to my laptop. And yeah, it has an advantage that I, for things like this, I can use 2 screens at the same time. But when I'm doing detailed stuff, I tend to look at the big screen now, which is actually, it is higher than my laptop. And it's less strain on my eyes, on my body and everything, actually.
There we go. And that's exactly what you should do, because as you've rightly said, the eyes also, some of these screens are better designed for long-term usage. Some laptops are not. Depends how new they are. Depends what kind of technology. We've all heard of blue light exposure. When you look at blue light for a long period of time, it can affect your sleep patterns. It affects your brain waves. It can enormously fatigue your eyeballs as well. So, there are definitely factors that were considered in office life, but things we weren't even considering back at home, because we might be working off a tablet, which is hugely underpowered. Old, and we hold it in our hands and look straight down, which is even worse. So, it's just that transition which hasn't been managed as a proper way of recommending people to look after themselves. So that's what I've been very happy to do. And I hope that this platform will get it out to people who are working from home, to make them think, maybe I should make my setup more appropriate for my posture. And it will help me as well. So as in help the person listening. So I do hope that there's some value from this for sure.
Yeah. And just one other thing, while we're still on this kind of theme, and I'm speaking from a personal level. I know not everybody is the same here, but I certainly know that my general level of fitness over this last year has gone down and down. Part of that is self-inflicted, because I refuse to go out and do exercise wearing a mask. It just takes away the pleasure, and rather than getting into trouble and having people coming up and shouting at me, we've just taken the decision, okay, we don't do it. But I'm very conscious that my general level of fitness has gone down. Probably lost some muscle mass as well.
You will have.
And I don't think I can be unique in this situation. What advice would you give to people?
You're definitely not. And so this goes into the part that I've been talking about for nearly 20 years in my professional life, which is physicality becomes increasingly important the older you become, not less important.
Right.
And the mindset is that we think, when we get to a certain age in life, we should slow down, and maybe when we retire, shall we say, we can do the slow things in life and so on and so forth. But actually, what that does is it accelerates your rate to problems, physical problems,
right?
Whether they be cardiovascular, heart and lungs, whether they be joints, knees, things like that. If you do less, your body thinks, okay, well, it's time to start doing a bit less then, working a bit less hard, and maybe not healing quite so much.
Definitely.
So that's fine. If you're taking it easy, I'll take it easy. And that's just the way it works. Whereas if you're providing even a little bit of stress, which could be a walk for 30 minutes, it could be a walk for 40 minutes, it could be a walk up a mountain one day, it makes a huge difference. And although you might feel sore from that, if it's the first time you've done it, then your body will feel less sore if you do it again. So based on what you've just said here, everyone's fitness will have reduced 100%, because you're just not doing as much, and you're not allowed to do as much as you've been able to prior. But it's very important that you do prioritize getting back to some form of exercise. And what I would stress to all the listeners and anyone who wants to get back into physicality is start off slow.
Sure.
Don't compare your physicality to where you were after we locked down, or just before.
Before lockdown, yeah.
Just before lockdown. If you were climbing a mountain just before lockdown, don't go and now climb a mountain. Because you might fall off, you might not make it, you might not get even halfway up there, and then you feel despondent, really disappointed, or worse, you'll injure yourself.
Yeah.
You didn't get to climbing the mountain by climbing a mountain the first time round. You built up slowly. And that's all you need to do.
Sure.
That's all you need to do. It's baby steps. Just like a baby, just like a child, just like anyone coming out from any major rest period, you build it up slowly. If it starts with 10 minutes in your local area, and ideally you don't have to wear a mask, brilliant, because you're in your community or you're in the campo or something like that, then do that. If you can take yourself somewhere away from the general public and where there's no issue with masks, because I completely agree, it's a non-productive thing to wear all the time, for sure.
Yeah.
And even less productive if you're in a very open space. So if you're in an open space, it's important that you breathe that air, and you just build it up very progressively. It's that simple. And one of the tasks that I will give my patients is, how long did you walk today for? 10 minutes. Fantastic. Tomorrow, can you do 12?
Yeah.
The end of the week, could you do 15? Yeah, I can do 15, no problem.
Yeah. And there's also a psychological part to this as well, isn't it? That it's kind of what you said, that our bodies adapt to this new way of life, which is actually very easy. Doing nothing in terms of physical exercise.
It's made us all lazier. It's made us all lazier, which is really dangerous. Exactly. I mean, myself as well, I'm usually quite a motivated person, but if I can just chill out at home, there's probably something on Netflix that I could watch.
Sure.
Whereas I should go to the gym, but of course it's designed that way. Laptops, as you said, they're designed to be useful. Phones, they're designed to be addictive. Netflix is very addictive. Yeah. So
I do know via a mutual friend that you're a paddle player, yeah?
Yes. I've taken it up. I'm originally a tennis player, and I come from a tennis family very much. But since moving here, and in the last 2 years, I'm into my paddle in a big way. I'm actually playing in a tournament tomorrow.
And James said, please be easy on him.
That's the mutual friend. Okay.
He said, I don't know if he's going to give me a kicking or if he's going to take it easy on me.
Yeah. No, the latter. No, give him a kicking.
Give him a kicking.
Sorry, the former.
Okay, James, hope you heard that.
I'm quite competitive, so I won't be going easy at all. So,
right, Marcel, we're going to take another short break, and this time it's going to be Bob Marley.
Oh, fantastic.
Welcome back to Live from the Costa del Sol. I'm Bill Anderson, and I'm talking with my guest, Marcel Salazar, about, all things health, really, Marcel, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And something that has concerned me over the last 14, 15 months, with all the things that have been going on with illnesses and hospitals and, without going into the name of it all, the COVID-19 thing, one thing that has concerned me is that there's been very little talk, certainly from official institutions, about boosting our immune system. And surely, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but it makes sense to me that we're going to get through all this better if our immune system is in good nick than if it's not.
Correct. Absolutely. And I think the statement of I'm not a doctor is actually quite interesting one, because a lot of doctors are not formally trained on things like nutrition.
Absolutely.
And we know, and we're hopefully learning a lot more than we have been before, that the nutrition, what you put into your body and what you expose your body to, directly impacts your immune system.
Yeah.
So when we think of it that way, it's actually something we have complete control over. Mm-hmm. And that means that every time you are consuming something perhaps that isn't very good for you, let's say a large volume of alcohol or a lot of deep fried food or a lot of packet cereals, things like that, it's important that you know that that has a direct impact on not just your body weight, but your immune system as well. So when we think of immune boosting, it's important that you reflect on things like how much raw food am I eating, for example. So sure. Ideally, everyone knows raw food is something that you want to try and consume as much as possible of. So we tend to eat fruits raw, But fruit is not always necessarily the best source of vitamin C, for example. Vitamin C is obviously correlated with your immune system, but it's not the only vitamin and mineral that helps with your immune system. But most people think of orange juice, for example, when we think of vitamin C.
Vitamin C is orange. Of course it is.
Orange juice is not the best source of vitamin C. It really isn't. I mean, you get more from peas, you get more from acerola cherries, all that type of stuff. There are many things above orange juice, and the bonus is that we have a lot of access to it in this part of the world. If you're in the Costa del Sol, you can get amazing access. But in addition to that access, I would always highly recommend, if you can, buy locally from a local farmer's market or from any farm where it's grown locally. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, Spain is one of the highest users of pesticides, unfortunately. So it's difficult to avoid at the best of times. Mm-hmm. But anyway, if it's going to be locally grown, it means that it's probably been picked when it's ready. If it's come from a supermarket, it probably hasn't.
Right, okay.
So your content, your nutritional value is significantly reduced when you are buying it from something where it's had to travel an awful long way. Now, again, in supermarkets, they do buy local as well. They buy a lot of things that are from Spain, from within. So, transportation is 1 or 2 days. That's fine. And you can see that. And that's why the origin of fruits and vegetables should now be labeled on every single item you buy. Yeah. And that's for a very, very good reason.
I know when we go to the supermarket now, before, I have to say this is more down to Vicky than down to me, but before it goes in the trolley, she puts her spectacles on and reads the label on the back. And then she'll go, no, not having that. Too many chemicals. No, too many chemicals. And there are chemicals and things that it's like, why have they added stuff to this, for goodness sake,
Yes, absolutely.
And the other thing is, we live in a very sunny climate, vitamin D. So are we getting enough vitamin D just by living here, Marcel?
Yeah. No. And you are getting enough vitamin D at the height of summer. Okay. And the reason for that is because we're generally wearing a lot less. We're exposing our skin to the sun. And then we're actually getting enough vitamin D, shall we say. It depends on the individual, of course. It's a huge generalization. Yeah. But generally speaking, to get enough vitamin D, we need to be exposing quite a large volume of our skin to the sun in order for us to synthesize the vitamin D. Any other time, even now, springtime, I mean, I've still got trousers on.
Yeah, sure.
So, I'm not exposing my skin to the sun enough that therefore supplementation is highly recommended. And I do recommend supplementation because it's very hard to find the variety that you need in your everyday diet that we benefit from. And your immune system is dependent on variety. So I do recommend certain supplements, including vitamins and minerals, and also nutritional supplements as well, that I've been working with for a long time because I know that they will boost your body's ability to recover and heal. And exposure to the sun is in addition to that. But if you're not exposing your skin, then you may as well take a supplement from a good source, if you can, in order to facilitate your immune system, because vitamin D is very important.
Are fish oils a good source of vitamin D? Fish oils?
No, not necessarily. You get omegas from fish oils.
Oh, you get the omegas, right?
You get the omegas. So omegas are highly recommended. Now, fish oils, they have their own set of problems. Fish oil in its purest form is ideal. And what I mean by that is you get it from the fish.
Right, okay.
So if you're eating, for example, a great source, sardinas from the chiringuitos here are
done on the barbecue. Yeah.
Barbecue. They're they're literally pulled from the sea here. They're fresh, they're local, they're amazing. And you eat as much as you can safely, obviously. And that's going to give you a mixture of omegas, calcium, potassium, all sorts of things, because you're going to eat the little bones as well, because that's the best source of bone generation, which means bone creation in your own body, is to consume the fish bones, obviously safely, the little ones. But you're also going to get the omega fats, which are in the gray meat, by the way. It's very important you eat the gray meat. That's full of fat. But actually, if you want to supplement omega oils, the problem with omega oil as a supplement is that they tend to be from very metallic fish, and it tends to be just a mix of all of the waste product to put into these capsules, which makes them very affordable. Right. The process of getting omega oils is not that cheap. But to get the ones that we buy cheaply is because we're getting it cheap. We're getting all the stuff. So the heavy metals are very, very high. Obviously, the cost on the fish is very, very high because they have to die.
Yes.
So there are alternatives. Again, like I said, I've been working with a supplement company that actually does vegan alternatives, which are a blend of omegas. Why would you take omegas? You take omegas because the fats are essential for your eyes, your brain, your nervous system, and your joints.
Right.
They all depend on those types of healthy fats. Mm-hmm. And again, this whole fear around fats is a bit confusing, but fats are very, very important for our bodies, even saturated fats to a certain extent.
Okay.
But the worst thing you can have in the morning, I would suggest for breakfast, is a bowl of cereal. I have a thing against cereal, I'm afraid.
You're obviously not sponsored by a cereal company here, Marcel.
I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not sponsored by a cereal company. Certainly not. Even if they did pay me, I wouldn't recommend it.
Listen, Marcel, believe it or not, our time has gone.
Oh, you're kidding.
It has flown in incredibly quickly. I think I'd like to have you back on someday to talk about more of this stuff, because I think it's very interesting. And it's relevant to all of us. It doesn't matter where people are listening from. I think this is really interesting. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. If people want to check out your website, www.strongforlife, or one word, strongforlife.es. Marcel, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me. I would be absolutely thrilled to do this again. And I really hope that people have got some value out of it. And please do let me know if you have. That would be great.
Thank you so much.